I'm John Fogarty, and it's a pleasure to present our proposed budget for our diocese once again. The budget was proposed to the Executive Committee on January 26 by the Program Budget and Review Committee. The Executive Committee voted to present the budget to Annual Council. PB&R is chaired by John Anderson. Members are Bill Brower, Charlie Bauer, John Dutton, Scott Norris, Judy Dobson, and myself. I would like to thank the committee and Judy in particular for their work. Judy's role has expanded considerably this year. She is now the Director of Administration and Finance for the diocese. She continues to serve the diocese with distinction. Thank you, Judy and PB&R, for all you do to serve the diocese. First, I'll provide some context for the 2023 budget. As we look back over the past 3 years, quite a lot has happened. From a financial perspective, we have weathered the challenges well and are ready to build on our foundation. So let's start by reviewing developments over the past 3 years. Bishop Susan established the 5 initiatives for the diocese, and they have become the guide to how we prioritize our actions and organization. We have aligned the staff with the 5 initiatives. As mentioned earlier, Judy has a new role and in addition to her comptroller duties, has now taken on many of the administrative responsibilities formerly handled by Ed Tracy. Responsibilities for our benefit plans has been given to Susan Allen, who is doing an outstanding job. Over time, the actual duties of some staff members significantly expanded from their original roles. We have aligned their compensation with their roles. We also added 2 new positions, which directly relate to 2 of the 5 initiatives, with Canon James and Canon Willis. And finally, we added 1 administrative staff position to better support the canons and staff. The diocese helped Shanko complete its capital campaign for the buildings by pledging $300,000 over 3 years. At this point, the remaining debt is covered by pledges and other commitments. Canon Roy and the real estate team, led by John Rector, have been busy monetizing idle property, which brings in revenue and reduces expenses. And finally, in part because of the monetization of real estate over the past 3 years, we have not overdrawn the 5% spending policy, although we had budgeted to do so. More on that topic later. I hope you'll agree that a lot of positive things have been accomplished. Today, we have a clear direction and our staff is aligned with our initiatives. Our programs are in action to carry out our initiatives. You see a few of them on the slide. For the coming year, we will be assessing the effectiveness of our programs, sustaining our investments in our programs, and building our endowment to meet our future needs. Let's take a look at the 2023 proposed budget. We propose a $68,000 increase in budgeted expenses over 2022. This is a modest 2.5% increase given the inflationary environment. To the right of the screen, you see some of the more significant changes from 2022. I will only comment on a few of them. We adjusted compensation by 4.5% for the effect of inflation, and this should not be viewed as a raise. We have invested in new programs for coaching, mutual ministry, and ministry transition funds. We have also reprioritized fundings for building grants to assist with needed parish improvements and repairs. These increases are offset in part by the reduction of rent and lower level of investment in DCDI now that the program is up and running and has some offsetting revenue from fees. So where do we spend our money? Judy reclassified the budget into sections that correspond to the 5 initiatives, as a way to better see whether our allocation of financial resources aligns with our initiatives. These amounts would be similar for 2022. Rule of Life includes college and young adult ministries, youth, Christian formation, outreach, etc. Congregational development includes support of parish life, leadership, staff, and governance. Creation care includes costs related to the office and real estate. Staff and PB&R made a strong effort to contain costs in 2023, and not every request for funding was met entirely. We hope to be able to grow our revenue and our endowment to be able to meet future requests. So where does our money come from? About half of our money comes from you, the parishes. This is a pretty stable trend over time. About a fourth comes from the 5% draw on the endowment, which is also pretty stable over time. Other revenue comes primarily from fees for various programs and meetings, which partially offset the costs. And finally, about 10% comes from a possible additional draw on the endowment. As I mentioned earlier, we have not overdrawn the endowment over the past 3 years, nor do we expect to in 2023 because we expect to have real estate sales of about $1.2 million, which will cover the excess and allow us to increase the endowment. So let's take a look at parish giving in more detail. This slide shows us how contributions from parishes break down according to the size of parishes. This data is taken from 2021, which is the most recent year for which we have reasonably complete data. The actual contributions for 2021 and the related reported pledge and plate for 2019 are shown. Not surprisingly, 10% of our parishes gave about 40% of the total. These parishes, in total, gave about 7.3% of their reported pledge and plate. Contributions ranged from $30,000 to $128,000. You can see the other categories on the slide. The percentage of pledge and plate remained similar, with some decrease for the smaller parishes, as one might expect. 23 parishes did not report pledge and plate or make a pledge in 2021. This was much larger than in the past, and no doubt resulted from the uncertainty over COVID. But these parishes gave over $180,000. Therefore, actual giving over all parishes is a bit less than the 7.9% shown on the slide because 23 parishes did not report pledge and plate. Overall, parishes gave about 7 to 7.5% of their pledge and plate. We hope this can increase over time, but we are aware of the financial pressures on many of our parishes, and we thank you all for the support you have shown. So how is our endowment doing? It should be no surprise that 2022 was a miserable year for investments. Both equity and bond markets declined, which very rarely happens in the same year. Our portfolio suffered an unrealized loss of about $3.7 million. But bear in mind, this is unrealized and does not represent an actual loss. We also need to remember that 2021 saw very large unrealized gains. Essentially, at the end of 2022, we are back to where we were at the end of 2020. But seeing these declines is never fun. Our one-year rate of return was just under 14.5% loss, which was reasonably in line with the market as a whole. The blended benchmark for the composite fund declined a little less than about 13.5%. This is due to a heavier weighting to international markets than our portfolio. International markets performed better than domestic markets in the fourth quarter. Having said all of this, what is really important is to look at the longer-term rates of return because our endowment has a perpetual time horizon. As you see, over 5 years, the compounded rate of return net of fees has been 5.35%, which well exceeded our benchmark of 3.91. But remember that we have drawn 5%, and there's been inflation over the past 5 years. So our investment returns have not kept up with our spending rate plus inflation. Over 10 years, the return has been 6.7%, but still does not fully compensate for inflation. Our advisors tell us that 2023 will be volatile, but should be a foundation for future growth. Of course, all investment advisors say that sort of thing, so we'll just have to see. As I mentioned earlier, we have not exceeded the 5% spending policy in total over the past 3 years, although we had budgeted to do so. The $95,000 excess draw in 2021 is covered by the $700,000 unbudgeted gift in 2022. Why did we not exceed the 5% draw as budgeted? Well, first, we do not budget for real estate sales because, as we all know, they are not done till they're done. In addition, in 2022, we had a totally unexpected gift of $700,000. This put us in the black for 2022. We have also budgeted contingencies during the pandemic that ultimately were not used. And finally, we try to budget conservatively so that we will avoid nasty surprises. But the main reason for these results is that we have received unbudgeted revenue that cannot always be expected to materialize. That leads us to a quick view of what's ahead for the next 3 to 5 years. We can expect higher inflation than in the pre-pandemic period, which puts pressure on us all. Half of our revenue comes from our parishes, so the health of all of our parishes is critical. As you have seen, we are making investments in the health of our parishes. Chanco faces uncertainty going forward from challenges in hiring staff, rising costs, and low demand for services beyond the summer camp programs. The outlook for investment performance is more unclear than typical for a variety of reasons, but our portfolio is professionally managed and well diversified. Sales of real estate will be a very important part of our financial health over the next few years, but are not an endless source of funding. Hence, the need to steadily increase our endowment to help fund our diocese for the future. Thank you for listening. Judy and I are happy to answer questions and have your comments.